Welcome to the Wargamoscope number 4. Today I'm going to tell you about Napoleon's Conquests, just reissued by Fellowship of Simulations, a semi-cooperative game for 3 to 5 players, which retraces the Napoleonic epic from 1795 to 1812 on a strategic scale, as well as the military, diplomatic, social, and economic developments of the great European nations of the time. The game board shows Europe divided into land and sea zones. Around the board are various placement and tracking tracks, turns and order of play, initiative, finance, national morale, society, military and diplomatic actions, control of neutral capitals, morale and society levels, status of current alliances, and military victory levels. At the start, each player is endowed with treasure, troops on the map and in reserve, movement points representing his supply chain, and a hand of action cards. In addition, each coalition player randomly draws a personal objective card. The action cards, which are the engine of the game, are divided into 4 distinct packs, i.e. 2 packs per era and per side. Each game turn begins with all players collecting revenues at the rate of 1 coin per land or sea zone controlled by at least 3 points of military power from a single player. Control of neutral or opposing capitals grants 5 coins each. Then, in turn order, players place their advisors one by one on free boxes in the action zones. Note that the coalized players each have 3 advisors, while the French one has 5. Once this is done, all advisor actions are resolved from top to bottom and from left to right. The player concerned first recovers his advisor and immediately benefits from the bonuses of the box, which can be money, movement points, morale, action cards, or the purchase of movement points and units for his next military campaign, which appear in his home capital or another capital he controls. Next, he can play one of his action cards, activating the effect of the color corresponding to the category of the box from which his advisor has been removed. This effect can be a gain of points, money, or a bonus in the corresponding category. Note that all action cards have a colored band on the reverse side, corresponding to the main category they cover on the front, giving a potential clue to other players when you have them in hand. A morale level marker that reaches an icon for the first time grants a bonus to its player. The same mechanism works for social level, except that all coalition players act on a common column. To change the order of the next turn, place an advisor on the initiative track. Alliances are created for a duration of 2 game turns, by combining the following conditions. Place an advisor on the diplomacy track, have troops adjacent to those of the future ally, pay a total of 3 coins per ally, and each ally must discard an action card with the orange diplomacy color. This makes it possible to cross an ally's territory, fight jointly with his troops, create a multinational force, or exchange an action card with the ally. Under certain conditions, the French player can force a coalition player not yet in an alliance to become an ally. A player can cancel an opposing alliance by placing an advisor on a diplomatic action, then spending money and playing a card with a diplomatic effect. Finally, if he wishes, a player can always replace the play of a card by the purchase of an action card drawn from his deck. During the troop movement phase, players, in turn order, move all or part of their military units, spending the movement points they have acquired, according to the following costs. When entering enemy-occupied territory, a force can either stop and fight or overrun it, leaving at least 2 units behind and spending 3 additional movement points per opposing unit present in the area to continue with the remaining troops. Similarly, if the phasing player wishes to leave a conflict zone he shares with an opponent, he must leave a rearguard of 2 units and pay an additional 3 movement points per opposing unit present to move out. Embarkation, disembarkation, and sea movement also consume movement points. Once all players' troops have been moved, combat takes place in any area where 2 non-allied nations have troops, bearing in mind that, unlike land battles, naval battles are not compulsory. In a land battle, each side calculates its total power according to the following scale. A significant difference in morale between opponents can also add power to their troops. If players have not used one of their advisors on a military action box, they can use it to play the military effect of an action card in combat. Finally, to add a little randomness to the battle, the attacker rolls a die which, depending on the score, grants a power bonus or penalty to his troops. The outcome of the battle is then determined by going through the battle resolution table from top to bottom, taking into account the first case that applies according to the previously calculated powers. Depending on the result, various effects affect the attacker and defender, from the units themselves, to the morale, finances, social, and diplomatic levels of the nations involved, to the transfer of opposing troops to one's own camp. Also, depending on victory level and certain conditions, the attacking player can launch his cavalry against retreating enemy troops or advance one additional enemy-free territory. Similarly, the player who achieves a strategic or tactical victory level records it on the victory track, which will be taken into account at the end of the game if there is no winner by sudden death. The resolution mechanism is exactly the same for naval battles. At the end of the turn, players draw new action cards, change the order of play for the next turn, and check their victory conditions. Basically, the French player wins if he controls Paris and other major capitals, while reaching a certain level on the society and possibly morale scale. For their part, the coalists can win collectively if they annihilate Napoleon by controlling all of France or by bringing his morale to 0, or by reaching a certain level in society and morale while capturing Paris and her neutral capitals. But a coalesced player can also win the game alone, if he alone controls Paris or enough neutral capitals and has reached the required thresholds in society and morale, or if, in addition to the coalition victory, he has also fulfilled his secret victory conditions drawn at random at the start of the game. An individual points victory can also be awarded at the end of the game if these conditions have not been met. These take into account secret objectives achieved, capitals and territories controlled, military victories won, morale levels, and remaining military forces. A game of Napoleon's Conquests takes up a good part of an evening, and is above all a constant choice of advisor placement and action cards play. It's a real challenge for the French player, who has to be very aggressive and fast, in order to weaken his coalition opponents as much as possible before they become too powerful. But it's also a challenge for coalition players looking to win the game on their own, an objective I recommend once you're familiar with the game.